Ladies and gentlemen, this is reaction. This is the Imperium's 10 worst jobs. Warhammer 40k lore history by the channel Lutin01. Yes, Lutin video. It's been a while since I did a Lutin video, but yeah, this is going to be very interesting because I know Imperium is big, right? They have many divisions, different type of jobs overall. We mostly hear about the how Astra Militarum and things like that, military, Astartes, all those divisions. We don't think about all the behind the workers, right? Logistic, this and that, mechanics, right? I hope this doesn't just talk about the military aspect of it. It talks about the whole Imperium altogether. So yeah, let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I've done quite a few Warhammer videos already, so if you haven't seen them, check out the link in the description. There you'll find the playlist with all my Warhammer 40k videos. Check out the end card, I'll link there too, I guess. Yeah, let's watch it. Okay. Damn, that is some some decree or something, right? When humans don't do their job, they're nothing but animal. They should be left to die for God or whatever in the eyes of Emperor. That's just fucked up.
When we look at the lives of those serving the Imperium, we must also understand that it is assumed that all of their service is at the behest and honour of serving the Emperor of Man and the Imperium itself. Now, while the official line from the Administratum would be that to give yourself in whatever means are required for the betterment of the Imperium is a noble cause, just and above all else a required task, it's worth remembering that these people are still humans serving in the Imperium, not superhuman Astartes or fanatical religious zealots, not cultish machine worshippers or drug-crazed hive gang members, just your average person trying to stay alive and do the best that they can. Now, while undoubtedly citizens of the Imperium know that they give to a greater cause and are indoctrinated from birth into the imperial truth, at the same time you can't escape the harsh realities of some of the worst jobs imaginable for those poor saps who end up designated with such a plight in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium.
So this heretic named Lutin is going to talk about all the oppressions in Imperium. Like there can be such thing, right? Everybody's happy there. What you talking about?
Also, I think a short disclaimer is in order. By our standards, most jobs in the Imperium are often not really what you would quantify as jobs. You might simply be compelled by your seniors toward a role that then becomes your lot in life. There's really no true unified or standardized currency system within the Imperium itself either. To do so would be challenging, if not impossible, given the distant scale and general instability of the Imperium as a whole. While hive cities, for example, may use credits within them, or other planets operate on a more basic bartering system, some even using coinage, there's also the throne gelt, which is likely as close to being a universal payment as exists, and this is often used by, say, rogue traders and inquisitors who are travelling between systems. Overall, though, there's no unified economic system. It's all based on tithes and requirements for the Imperium's needs. It's all fairly inconsistent. While some jobs are paid and unpaid, it's often unlikely that you're going to have a literal choice in what your assigned lot in life is. People aren't going to be going out to school and then choosing a vocation, although obviously for some jobs, some roles, some level of moderate education is required so that you can best interact with the materials and data slates that you're having to handle. But you as an individual are an unimportant speck in the grand scheme of the Imperium, and you will do what is required of you, because that is your reality. Moreover, most of the Imperium trades in...
You're the property of Imperium, basically, right? You're in servitude of the Imperium and what needed by the Imperium. Of course, why would there be currency? Well, everything's controlled by the Imperium. Probably what food you should eat, clothes, and everything is provided by Imperium. Why would you need currency? That's the mentality here. Damn, imagine living in the kind of conditions, man.
Commodities. This can be raw materials, military hardware, and very often humans. So more than likely you are an asset and will be utilized however the Imperium sees it. The best way to visualize currency in the Imperium is that it's all system specific for the most part, and within a hive, for one, you are likely never going to leave, and so its credit system would be very specific to that location. There's no need for it to exist outside of that. Think of it like company money. You get paid by the person you're working for, who then also happens to simultaneously produce all of your other requirements. So you then are being paid by and paying back into that same company. It's a good way to basically regulate what the citizenry are using and ensure that everybody gets their fair or perhaps basic requirement share of things. Now you think you've got a worse 40k job in mind? Well, throw it down in the comments and maybe I'll include it in part 2 of this if I do a follow-up. And if you guys enjoy this and we open it up to even some more loose speculation for different parameters and different aspects of Warhammer 40,000, this could become an ongoing accompanying series. So now I
can't really think of a worse job, but I do know that if anybody joins the military, Astra Militarum, right, your basic military, they will be so happy like they escaped the servitude or something, because that's better than anything else, right, so far. So I guess that could just show you like how fucked up the certain jobs and how horrible certain jobs can be.
Actual order of horror. To begin with, servitors. Now, for reasons we won't get into here, within the Imperium, any advanced state of artificial intelligence is aggressively outlawed. So instead, the ever-ingenious humanity of the future has found a fantastic solution to get around this problem, because we are, after all, always such great problem solvers. The solution? Well, as is always the case, there is a plentiful supply of human plebs, criminals, and general undesirables. So how about we part lobotomize them, hopefully they get the gift of being mind-wiped, and then fuse what's left of their still living but now eviscerated carcasses into a somewhat functional cyborg. It's not really AI and it's not really human. Problem solved, everybody's happy. Except likely the unwilling participants of becoming a servitor. Servitors are a vital part of the Imperium, carrying out tasks too dangerous or too enduring for humans to want to take on the role. Although if no servitor were available and push comes to shove, you know that somebody's going to have to install that hyper-dangerous fuel system, and it's not going to be any officer types. While servitors are questionably necessary, they are a sad and incredibly depressing portrait of the dark future. And it's very questionable, given the fairly immoral state of humanity in the 41st millennium, just how well lobotomized these individuals are if they're not mind-wiped. Servitors, while carrying out their instructed functions, if left to their own devices, have been seen to become confused and disorientated, sometimes found in a lost corner of a starship or missing in the maze of a hive city, babbling to themselves with a sea of incomprehensible speech, with perhaps some scant details of their former selves and former lives, perhaps trying to formulate some cognition or sense of who they were before. Worse still, we hear stories of people who undergo surgery appearing to be under anesthetic, but are in fact just paralyzed and fully conscious. So it broaches the possibility that some or even many servitors are actually fully aware of the lives they are living, and with full awareness and memory of even their former lives. But yeah,
this kind of elements is always there. It's like with that theory, right? Like fridge light, right? You know the light is supposed to be off when you close the door, but how could you be sure of that, right? When you open the door, the light is going to be on. When you close the door, light is going to be off. But if you want to check it, you open it first, light is going to be on. So how can you be sure? I know somebody just put camera there. That's not the point, right? To us human eyes, how are we supposed to? So this is the kind of thing, like, okay, you say they're lobotomized, they don't feel or anything, but how the fuck would you know? So there's always this kind of a thing that you can think of, like, holy shit, these people might feel everything, right? These people are constantly under torture and nobody knows about it. There's always elements like that.
Then simply lack the ability to speak or even control their own bodies, trapped in a silent, monotonous and potentially unending agony in the prisons they have been physically melded into. One of probably the most common and unpleasant tasks to partake in within the Imperium would be working in its vast factories. Now, planets with hive cities will...
Oh, wait a minute, these are the different jobs. Okay, he put it the tagline. So first was servitors, now it's manufactorum. Alright, the point on servitors is that, like he said, they are basically criminals. Like, it's debatable how much of their crime was bigger, but since this is 41st millennia and everything's grim dark and there is no human rights, people are just, oh, they're just fucking criminals. So I guess even average people would be like, what if they feel something? What if they're constantly under torture? They're not going to care about it. Yeah, but they're criminals. Who gives a shit? I bet that's the mentality there.
usually be spattered with important resources, and their factories will then churn out any number of processed materials necessary for the functioning of their hive and or required by order of the Imperium off-world. The administrators and governors will not care how these orders are fulfilled, only that they are completed on time as required. This subsequently means the conditions for workers are just about as awful as you could imagine. Toxic, acrid air, long 20-hour shifts, token
there is no workers'
pay,
union.
and squalid, cramped living conditions. Still, for most people at this level of society, it's probably the best they could hope for. Upward mobility is not a thing, and the only other options being to slip into vagrancy and an underhive of horrors. Even then, this is a class of citizen who no one will blink an eye if somebody goes missing for whatever horrible reason, and still grinding day after day in a factory of hot, dangerous, and likely condemning you to a slow, agonizing death as your body is ravaged by fulfilling your work quota, coupled with the slow poisoning it receives every day, is hardly an appealing alternative, but it's the best that many can hope for. An Imperial Guardsman. Now, while a Guardsman is
Really? Like I said in the start of the video, like Guardsmen, I think, probably going to be like an escape joke. I mean, compared to the servitors and basically the workers in factories, it is an escape type of thing, but I'm surprised that it just landed here, which means their condition is really fucked up compared to the others, huh? So, first of all, this is, when I think about the workers in factory, I think about certain like images, right? Like certain times, like certain people working under oppressive, dictatorship or something, where there is no workers union and they basically, their condition is pretty fucked up. You always watch these photos, right? Certain people, working in coal mines and shit, right? They're all blackened out, their lungs is filled with coal and smoke, basically. And basically use that and amplify that by 1,000. That's the fucking condition they're working at. So the grim dark is really put emphasis on that, like this is grim dark.
Obviously an honourable and respected role for those in the Imperium, because frankly anybody forced to face down a 40-foot high lumbering alien killing machine who will in all likelihood either cleave you in two, strip the skin from your body leaving you running around screaming like a skinned animal, or just bludgeon you to a pulp, or maybe bombard you with projectiles full of acidic boring maggots, deserves a reasonable level of respect, even if that service was in fact non-consensual. As with many military roles in the Imperium, Guardsmen serve with a duality of horrific warfare experience coupled with unceasing immortal honour. Because of the extreme casualty rates, most Guardsmen are equipped with simply a lasgun, because why give them more than that when they're not going to be around to use it? A lasgun being a weapon often referred to as a flashlight because of its extremely poor effectiveness against the severe threats faced by the Imperium. Other heavy weaponry for its soldiers are available, as well as some devastatingly powerful tanks, ordnance and air support, but for your average man on the ground, bad luck, you get the lasgun. While Imperial propaganda will tell the glory of serving in the Imperium, the reality is fairly disconnected from this stirring and glorifying rhetoric. The phrase battle of attrition comes quickly to mind for many guardsmen who will not receive much if any personal body armour, unlike their superhuman Astartes saviours. Nope, you're going into battle with the shirt on your back, and as an individual, no one is going to be stopping to help you when you lose a limb or worse. And the word expendable will be very much on your commander's lips. Now, if it isn't bad enough that you're facing a nightmarish host of Xenos, your commissar will be standing right behind you, ready to kill you or your newfound friends on the slightest hint of your hesitation, or perhaps simply to just motivate those around you. Unless you have qualified for a specialist division or an elite force within the Guard, you're more than likely going to become Operation Human Shield. And if by some miracle you manage to survive the horrific conditions of battling alien horrors with little more than a gun that shoots light, having watched many around you die in the most unbearable of circumstances, and then still have your sanity intact, not to mention hopefully not having your body be completely broken, there's nothing to say that an orbiting Astartes or Inquisition may not simply decide that things are not going quite as well as they'd expected, and decide that in fact an orbital bombardment might best serve the fast resolution of the situation, and your service is appreciated, Guardsmen. If you feel like you're having a bad day and want to voice your concerns to those around you, this is not advisable. Commissars will be standing by to silence you for potentially damaging unit morale, but like so many aspects of the Imperium, the most hollow element is the fact that in serving your family, your planet, and your Imperium, you will not be remembered and will be 100% left behind if the situation warrants it. You will not be receiving a flashy service or your family informed of your demise. You are but one of millions upon millions of souls.
God, humans don't matter, human lives don't matter. That's the whole element of this Warhammer 40k. The more you hear about it, fuck. I mean, obviously, first when you think about this guardsman, right? I mean, in the 41st millennia, it's constantly war. If you join any army military today, it's not necessarily you'll be put out in the battlefield, right? It's not necessarily true, right? If there's a war and battle on, sure. But in 41st millennia, there's always war. There's always some battle. You're always going somewhere. And like he described, your life really don't matter. You are nothing, right? People can just kill you just to make an example after you. Like, the world fair doesn't even apply in this world. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you were, like he said, doesn't matter how great, how badass you are, like you're playing a fucking, Doom guy or something and just killing everything and you're just badass. That's still not going to matter. Because like he said, somebody could just bombard the fucking planet, you're dead, right? I mean, and obviously with the just basic pea shooter, how the fuck you're supposed to go against the, Tyrannid hives, fucking orcs and their big ass machines, weirdly shaped machines, necrons like that, right? Damn, this is fucked up. But it's still like, your base level human jobs, this at least should be somewhat rewarding, right? I mean, I'm guessing like if you survive all of that, there must be a system that promotes you eventually, right? I don't know.
Soldiers. While some planets are focused around specialist skills and military training, many more are unwitting or even unwillingly drafted. You will not receive special genetic engineering. You get your gun, your orders, and a direction to advance. Now get on with it, guardsmen, before your own officer shoots you for failure to follow command. Next, in direct contrast, is the dull monotony of bureaucracy. You are the grease and oil in the machine as an administrative scribe. While many lives in the Imperium are pain-ridden and lives of frustrating physical agony, there is an argument to be made that endless perpetual administration is equally unbearable. The role of an administrator or an administrative scribe is to perpetually carry out tasks that must seem simply entirely pointless in the grand scheme of things. Your daily tasks lost amid a vast ocean of information. Your whole being lost in reams and reams of paper trails, and even the purpose and intent of your tasks are potentially lost to meaning, or possibly even no longer required, having been long forgotten about. Billions of clerks, scribes, and general admin staff work tirelessly to manage the Imperium at every tier. Compared to others, this may seem like a sweet job to land yourself, but imagine having to do the same thing every day, without end, without opportunity, and without meaning.
Every single Hollywood movie starts with somebody has some kind of a desk job and they're depressed before some badass shit happens to them. So yes, guardsman is really fucked up job, but at least you see action. In this, it's just all about logistics, filing, paperwork, what the fuck, and that's your whole life. And knowing how big the Imperium is, that's just going to be ridiculous at length.
In many respects, it's the closest thing to hell for many. Pointless tasks with no thanks or appreciation, no sense of really contributing anything to the greater whole, cold, harsh working conditions, still subject to the same brutal rules and regulations that dictate all Imperial life. Indeed, the nature of the complex bureaucracy that is strictly enforced allows little room for error. Regulations, forms, protocols, and process is your life. Worse perhaps is to live a life of blind ignorance of the goings-on beyond the walls and confines of your endless daily data processing. Many administrative positions are considered hereditary as well, so you'll be committed to a life of permanent placement facing logic engines and cogitator workstations. For an administratum scribe working in their specific sub-departments, all must be recorded, catalogued, completed in quadruplet, processed, and then as long as centuries later, finally archived. The whole process is grindingly slow and dull beyond the strongest possible interpretation of the word. And as a final insult, you must fulfill your role accurately and efficiently for the entirety of your servitude. Failure to do so risks intervention by the Inquisition. Administrative departments who have failed to maintain an acceptable level of efficiency, or worse, make a catalogue of errors, may be subject to mass summary executions by Inquisitors for crimes against the Imperium. As a simple cog in a machine, you could also unknowingly participate in a scheme of upward conspiracy and corruption and be judged for this without even having having been aware of doing so. A thankless, soul-destroying job where you'll likely never see anything beyond the incarcerated walls of your administrative vault sector. Now, the human batteries, otherwise known as psychers, used to fuel the Emperor atop of his golden throne. Unsanctioned psychers are continually hunted by the Imperium, and when discovered they will likely be transported off-world to return to Terra in what are referred to as the much-feared Black Ships. As an unsanctioned psyker, you'll be assigned to one of two roles for the Imperium: training to a full operating psyker or a psychic human battery to fuel the Emperor and the Astronomican's daily required injection of psychic power. Unsanctioned psychers represent a great threat to populations as they run the risk of unwittingly becoming a portal for demonic incursion, and those imprisoned within its cavernous, permanently dark, freezing...
So basically witches of the 41st millennia, right? Everybody says, oh hell no. Oh hell no, it's psyker. Either, let's make them join our group or fucking sacrifice that for the Emperor. What was that, 6,000, 7,000? I forgot the number. Souls per day? I guess those are all psychers.
In cold holds on the journey back to Terra, with thousands of other unfortunate members being probably the most harrowing part of the ordeal, as these untrained psychers will expel their panicked and fraught emotions all around them. As such, only the most mentally strong Sisters of Silence will crew these vessels so as to be able to withstand the constantly soul-numbing despair of the incarcerated amateur psychers. For the majority of these poor souls, upon reaching Terra itself, their fate will be psychic disintegration as they're consumed by the Emperor and the Astronomican, their very mind, soul and body being consumed in agonizing psychic fire, and their bodies and brains are burned to ashes. But it does keep the Imperium's lighthouse lit for another day at least. An unpleasant but perhaps at least highly appreciated task to carry out in your...
Oh god, that's just... Man, is that it? I mean, I thought that some of these jobs is going to be the background jobs that we never heard of, but obviously he's also tackling, guardsmen, right? Now he's also tackling psychers. I'm guessing all the jobs are going to be... is Astartes here too? No, Astartes not. I mean, come on. I mean, Astartes cannot be that bad of a job, especially if you are superhuman. Like, you can take that shit, right? And you're revered, if nothing else.
Service for the Imperium is that of refueling a starship warp drive, and this has scant documentation on who specifically carries out this role, but it is described as being similar to a funeral procession. Those chosen to carry out the task will begin by leaving an airlock to cross the service deck of a ship, wearing robes of grey metallic thread connected up with valves of long cabling, all wearing thick lead gloves as they carry their heavy metal caskets upon their shoulders. The service staff's eyes, nose and mouth will be similarly fitted with these connective valves, the unknown material they carry within these caskets evidently being extremely hazardous, for as these individuals cross to their objective, their flesh, skin will slowly cook and be burned away. This process being described by tech priests as the most perilous operation a vessel could undertake, barring actual combat. As the procession of staff would approach the warp drive central column, the casket carriers would become even further physically damaged and even start to disintegrate, but being driven perhaps by the chemicals and gases being infused into them as pain suppressors and some chemical concoctions to enable them to carry out such a task, they lumber forward. But the closer the carriers come to the drive itself, the more they begin to stagger and their metallic robes deteriorate. Their infused chemicals keeping them barely standing as their bodies begin to quite literally fall apart, chunks of flesh and matter falling from their person as they push on to deliver their fuel to the drive. The casket would be finally pushed into a socket of the drive column as some of the carrier's limbs would detach and strips of muscle and bone hang down from their gaping robes. Servitor-like machines would collect the remains of the carriers and scrape these into yet more caskets before tech priests offer prayers to the machine god. With the last great effort, the final casket bearers would load their fuel into the drive before the doors would rapidly shut. The robed shells would now be retracted to the entry point, and the ship's captain might be heard to utter, "Emperor, preserve us," before finally turning away from the harrowing scene playing out on the engineering deck of their starship.
What the fuck?
Imagine life in something like the 13th century.
Oh god, what the fuck? Starship refueler. Who would have thought job like that exists? I mean, of course. I mean, anything that looting can throw at me, I'll be like, of course. Inhuman is not a thing in 41st millennia. There is no such thing as none of you matter. You are just a thing, right? Torture, pain as a regular basis. Like, yeah, that's just Imperium.
Essentially the Middle Ages, where anything like 90% of the population spend all of their time every day working the land. This is life on a feudal world. There are a few citizens with specific jobs working stone and metals, but your average person's life is doomed to endless hard labour. This physically destroying job is carried out from dawn to dusk, year-round, with the populace likely surviving on a meagre supply of its own productivity. A high mortality rate of disease and infection, industrial accidents with primitive machinery or domestic complications like no medicine to prevent women from dying in childbirth. This all in and of itself sounds hard enough of a life, but imagine, if you will, the job of a feudal gong farmer. Now what is this scintillating job? Well, it's collecting the mess of medieval latrines and cesspits, bringing it manually outside of a city or a town to be used as fertilizer for farming. You do get the privilege of searching through the waste if you choose to find any valuables, and by the way, you also have to work only during the night. And here's hoping you don't pass out from the fumes you're inhaling and potentially drown in the stuff you're having to rake out every night. And for those on a feudal world, to top it off, an Imperial administrator will be watching from an orbital platform, and that's about all the defenses your planet has. So let's hope no blood-crazed orcs, hungry tyrannids, or immoral demons come wandering by. If you thought working a feudal planet or in a factory...
Feudal peasant, oh god, that is... Going at night, collecting literal crap, and there's an actual threat of horrors. I mean, this is like a horror movie as it can get, right? It's night, you're collecting crap, right? And there are threats that you need to look out for in Horizon in darkness. I mean, if somebody, I mean, obviously the Warhammer 40k short movies are becoming a thing by fans. Somebody should create something on that. Like, that's the job, and then encounter something horror, like a horror short film. Oh, so many concepts with Warhammer 40k.
From material processing in a hive was bad, don't be so ungrateful, citizen. You have a privileged life compared to those poor souls working in agri-processing. While this is going to vary from hive planet to planet, some of the worst of this is processing what's referred to as corpse starch and ration biscuits, both unpleasant in their own way. As populations for the massive ecologies known as hive cities become quite simply ridiculous, housing anything between 10 and 100 billion citizens, the need for sustenance is obviously difficult to provide for. And while you may be lucky enough to save up your credits and purchase a delicious chunk...
Look at this whole thing. Knowing that it's densely packed. I remember that video of that there was that a building or a society or something like that in China, right? That was so densely packed, it was fucking ridiculous. It was just walled and everything inside was so much densely packed. It's just seeing that. I don't have that phobia. What is that phobia? Like, you know, small door, small space phobia. I forgot that. I don't have that, but even I would fucking develop if I'm in this kind of situation. Look at the density of it.
A rat meat, you're more than likely going to be enjoying some delicious ration bars or corpse starch. But how do workers produce such luxuries? Well, ration bars are best described as horribly greasy, generally unpopular, shockingly, and are biscuit bars to feed workers, serfs, and military forces. They're manufactured by harvesting bio-rich matter from ocean planets and worlds with seas, which then provides a protein-rich gruel. This, though, would be not enough to provide for the billions of citizens, so it must be instead fed to larvae of the Orochian bilefly. And when these larvae reach an optimal stage in their life cycle, when they're plump enough, the larvae are going to be pulped by workers and compressed down into the hard-to-stomach biscuit ration bars. The agri-workers doing this process will work in huge air-sealed pens that produce these plump fat larvae. If you're working in one of these places, then things are not going to be going well for you, and you're probably quite low down in your hive city as the stench and endless droning vibrations and material mechanical sounds of the bileflies is not one that many would choose to live with. Still though, it could be worse. You could be producing corpse starch, which is about as appealing as it sounds. This material is bland, filling, and relatively nutritious because it's basically reconstituted biomatter mixed with animals, plants, discarded organics, and of course rumoured to include human corpses as well. While this is undoubtedly frowned upon by various administrative departments of the Imperium, it's one of those things that a planetary governor is going to either sweep under the rug, play down, or full-on cover up. It's never
Let me get this straight. Since the world is so big, so many population and logistic is just off the roof, sometimes they have to sleep in human starch or whatever he called it, right? Human bodies as a food eventually, because it's impossible to manage this many people and feed this many people. Is that the case? What is the suicide ratio in this Imperium Warhammer 40k, right? Somebody should talk about that. The stats like that is there, because every single job is hellish. Every single, right? Other than the start of things with the laborers and, you know, that fucking lobotomized criminals who do things are gonna be worse. But that refueler, like, what the fuck? Right? And then there's, you know, literal guy in the feudal, areas, the guy who literally woman, whatever, goes to the place, collects crap literally, and just has to live in this kind of fucked up situation. Now this.
Out and out a disclosed ingredient, but highly suspected that one way the population are able to be adequately fed is the mechanical reclamation of human biomatter, albeit then diluted by various other organic materials. It's like so many things in the Imperium, on the borderline of being acceptable. And when faced with limited options for feeding your population, the alternative...
There is a borderline? I thought there was no borderline of acceptable. Anything is acceptable, as far as I can see. I didn't realize there's an actual border.
Being violent food riots, then it becomes a necessary evil. Pity though the workers who have to work in the stinking immoral environment where you must process endless stinking vats of biomatter, perhaps seeing some things that are going to be difficult to forget as you catch your eager 4 hours of rest before getting back into the production line. Now I am to cover the assassins of the Imperium, but one aspect in being selected to work as an Imperial assassin is their pre-training. Now, as with most Imperial roles, it's quite unpleasant. But specifically the role of the Eversa Temple, which disturbingly leans towards using the youngest recruits as they are less developed and therefore easier to...
Wait a minute, I remember something. What video was that talked about 3 branches of assassin? One of them was so fucked up. I guess that's what he's talking about, right?
Bioadapt later in surgery. To start off with, most recruits will be orphans from a death world, of which there are quite unsurprisingly a plentiful supply in the Imperium. These recruits, after some base training, will be transported to Terra, but en route they will continue to be trained by a survival of the fittest assessment. These very young recruits will engage in what can best be described as an ongoing battle royale of wills, initiative and resolve. Recruits are required to survive on minimal food, even minimal oxygen, for days on end, as well as continual forced fighting between themselves. This could be armed, unarmed, in near total darkness or distracting aural and lighting conditions. Heat, cold, varying levels of gravity from the thin to the severe all will be factors in their assessment. When they eventually reach Terra, there could be anything below 1/10 of the original number of recruits who have survived this harrowing ordeal, or perhaps none at all if their assessors deem them unsatisfactory to requirements. The recruits though will then be organised by the temple they are best suited for. Eversa assassin recruits face though the further horror of being now forcibly bioengineered. These youngest recruits, who are essentially children, will be turned through this process into unstoppable drug-fueled killing machines. To achieve this, the Medicus adepts will use a range of genetic adaptation, endoskeletal restructuring, bionic implants, and infusions of chemicals to turn the previously human youth into a nightmarish weapon that can barely be controlled by its own leaders. Their cerebral cortex will also be enhanced and the brain fitted with lobo chips. These will amplify the assassin's state of mind to either raging hate, pure determination, or extreme fanatical drive for the love of the Imperium at any cost. This whole process is unpleasant and far from risk-free. Many subjects will die of massive multi-organ collapse as their bodies struggle to handle the severe restructuring. And this is not to mention the inevitable side effects from being turned into a bio-enhanced, drug-fueled, borderline if not psychotic killing machine. Past this point, the assassin will continually attempt to balance the complex cocktail of chemicals that's fueling and simultaneously poisoning their system. Finally, at the end of all this, the assassin will be placed in cryosuspension, their bodies so drug-fueled and their own mindset so completely unstable that it's easier than keeping them actively conscious. Before a mission, they're going to be placed into a drop pod and then fired down to achieve their task. Becoming an Eversa assassin is like...
yeah, that is definitely the one I was thinking of, one of the 3 one. the skeleton looking fucking rage fuel with constant chemical going through their body. My god, they are just basically a weapon at this point. Hellless weapon that goes through hell constantly. They are basically, kids taken from the world, and they go through this mutation while they are kids. They didn't wait for them to become adults. And imagine that, you are already living in fucked up times. Now you are kidded on this something called death world, which I'm guessing from the birth until a certain point that you are there before they take you. It's not going to be such a pleasant time, right? These are children. Like, you come in this world while being, basically small kids. Basically, just are they playing in parks, right? Are they playing with teddy bear? No, they're just living through gruesome times constantly before this shit happens to them. Our brain cannot really process that. I mean, you can think of that at a certain point, like, oh, that's just fucked up, move on. But if you really try to think about that deep, like day-to-day thing, like since they're born to this point, your brain starts to hurt, like, what the fuck, that's just horrible. Man, seriously, whoever came up with the 40... First of all, I don't believe that somebody just point blank came up with Warhammer 40k like it is right now. Eventually, everything accumulated because there's way too many details about things, right? When it comes to lore, I know about many things, right? From Tolkien's Elder Scrolls, and there are way too many different type of lores and worlds that certain people created. Warhammer 40k is extremely dense and big.
Likely one of the worst jobs in the Imperium, as your life is nothing but soul-destroying pain and servitude to be stripped of everything you were and used as an indiscriminate weapon of the Imperium. Now, penal legions are the dregs of...
So the 31st millennia where Emperor really rose up, right? Yeah, and suddenly, fucking made the, entire human colony as strongest. Yeah, but he basically fucked the humans, right? I mean, all of this. Like, if Emperor didn't rose up and it's just society slowly just grew, would it be this fucked up and this kind of a horrible, where only Emperor and, goodness of humanity matters, everything is expendable? I don't think this is the kind of mentality it would have been. I don't think this kind of thing was existence when Emperor was there, right? This thing just became this kind of a dark in 41st millennium when Emperor is gone. When an Emperor was there, I don't think it was this dark, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Somebody put in the comments, like, when Emperor rose up, Emperor was at the top of the, chair, right? The heresy didn't happen yet. The golden years, whatever. The Imperium wasn't like this, right? All this shit became in the 41st millennia while they're struggling to just survive.
Imperial society, so you can imagine these are some less than capable individuals. These are usually members of the Imperial Guard and PDF who have perhaps not been executed on the spot for their crimes and instead commuted to a life sentence in the loosest definition of the word. However, a penal legion can be easily made up of murderers, maniacs, thieves, in general criminal elements of society, or just those who were far too incompetent in their duties and have been sentenced to play some more mildly useful role for the Imperium. These legions, though, unfortunately, are basically the waste dump of human society and are forced to wear explosive slave collars that are more about turning the troops into human bombs than a disciplinary incentive. They march in a...
not even servitors. Somebody even more fucked up that they can't even be servitors. They end up like this. Is that it?
A shambolic way towards their goal, or perhaps run if they're crazed, and then perhaps to just encourage those around them with whatever they're meant to be doing.
Wait a minute, what? Oh, there we go. Monsoon season started, people. Yeah, I need to change internet provider. It's getting haywire here.
Maybe a few of them will be blown up and detonated here and encourage a shambolic way towards their goal, or perhaps run if they're crazed, and then perhaps to just encourage those around them with whatever they're meant to be doing. Maybe a few of them will be blown up and detonated here and there. But is this the job we're talking about? Well, no. In fact, what we're actually sparing a thought toward are those tasked with maintaining control over these plebs. Penal Legion overseers essentially have the unfortunate task of herding a bunch of shambolic, potentially murderous and psychopathic cats. Some of the Penal Legion will relish their role and accept their death running headlong into the enemy, but others may fall into mental ruin, just falling to the floor, crying, unable to move. Others may try to run away or simply just lash out and kill those standing around them. As frustratingly soul-destroying as such a task is, those commanding a penal legion are usually well versed in dealing out punishment.
So basically in our world, a version of this must be like if you are in a maximum security prison and you are guard, that's what basically they are, right? I mean, they could just basically, you know, it's just normal doing their thing, or they could start to a revolt or even kill you while you're, you know, basically overseeing them. So this is just amplified by 1,000,000 or something.
Cruelty and incentives to their force will lay down brutal levels of discipline. Despite this professionalism though, it's still likely one of the most frustrating roles to have to command in, with a force who are potentially just as happy killing each other and themselves as they are the enemy. So now to finish, I'm going to have to break your immersion. But the truest worst job that could exist in 40k is, well, whatever you can draw from your own imagination. Because this might seem like a cop-out, but it's actually the real bedrock of 40k. Because
this is what he's talking about, is what I thought at the start of the video. Like Imperium is so big, 40k lore is so big, right? Even though all the job you can list, there must be certain things happening in the background that even Imperium don't know about, right? There must be some hellish job that nobody knows, because you know, mystery is part of the 40k world, right? In Warhammer, like that happens in the space, like how I saw the video of Halo worlds, right? Like mystery is part of the game, like something nobody knows, but that could be there. That could be really hellish and horrible. This is what I thought when I saw the title of this video. Like, yeah.
While it has embedded canon and non-canon lore, it's also a world whereby you, as a participant, are encouraged to use your own imagination. The civilian life of the Dark Future is very poorly documented, and really we only have scraps of information compared to the endless raging warfest that is ongoing between various factions. The civilian life of the Imperium is perhaps one of the most interesting aspects that exists in the 40k universe, and if Games Workshop will not expand upon it, maybe it's time we start doing so ourselves with some wild speculations and imaginings. The whole thing...
Are they not expanding it, or are they leaving off there for the whole point of mystery, right? I mean, mystery is important in any other lore, like, you know, just leaving things half-assed. Well, that just makes you think, like, what could be there? Like, what could be the reason? Like, there is no lore behind it. You know, it's just mystery. It could be anything.
With 40k is that the Imperium itself is so fractured and spread across countless systems with vast distance.
Yeah, like the gold stars and shit, like, you know, Halo stars. Like, nobody knows what that is, right? They go there, there's nobody returns, so it's just up to your email, like, what the fuck?
In between, it's really hard to focus in on some of the details of different worlds. Now this has happened very, very slowly over time with little fragments of information, but some could be, for example, nightmarish gulags, while others could be verdant, lush garden worlds of pleasure. Others could be more Earth-like with all the complex goings-on of human life that this entails, or you could be living in a horrific hive city or toxic choking forge world. Or how about a planet that's being cut off from the Imperium due to a simple administrative error, forced to go its own way with the vague hope of one day being rediscovered if it's not destroyed by some other alien process in the meanwhilest. And this for me is one of the most enjoyable parts of Warhammer 40,000. You can use your own imagination to build a whole narrative given the existing lore and framework of the factions within it. Often the world of 40k draws on real-world history, and it's something that I really love the idea of doing in creating whole descriptions of planets and locations that are non-canon and entirely fictional. Perhaps this is something I'll find time to do, perhaps it's something you guys would be interested in me doing. In the meanwhile, worst jobs, canon or not, tell me down below what's the worst thing you can come up with. I'm probably going to regret asking that, but let's see. As always guys, thanks for watching, and thank you for your...
This is part 2? What the fuck, and it's an hour long? How the fuck did he came across more? I guess people told him in the comments? Oh, I didn't even see that video. That's a 1 hour long video. It's double this size. And now it's not 10, it's just like the Imperium's worst jobs, so God knows how many is going to be there. Wow, I'm definitely checking that video because I'm interested now. Like, what more is there? Holy shit. Certain things in this video were crazy, but nothing can really surprise you. But some of them kind of surprised me, like how horrible they are. But yeah, when you made up your mind, like 40k is just inhumane, it's fucked up, and many horrible things are accepted. Nothing can really surprise you. It's just like, yeah, it makes a fucking 40k. But certain things are just, yeah. God. I mean, I'm still hoping that somebody in the future creates a massive AAA open world RPG game based on Warhammer 40k alone. That's it. Take your galaxy, like how the map's shown there, right? There is so much things, so many elements to so many different storyline that every game can tackle as a main story and expand upon it. That like how there is Elder Scrolls 5, now it's going to be Elder Scrolls 6. I'm hoping there's so many going to be like Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, Warhammer 3, until Warhammer 5. You have way too much lore expanded already. Not expanded, so many lore told, right? In these games, the games is like, you know, at least 100 hours long, right? There's a massive side quest, this quest type of game. Of course, you're going to be something like a Stardust or something where you can have freedom. You're not going to have some bottom job, otherwise you're not going to have freedom. What you're going to do in open world? But you know, everything is recaptured. Every small only studio I can think of that does that is Bethesda Game Studios. However fucked up you might think it is, however bad you might think they are, however their engine is bad, that's the only studio that really captures something at this scale. Like, look at Elder Scrolls and all those side stories. Look at the Fallout and their all side stories, like how they slowly capture everything and expand on this universe. It started with 3 in their latest reincarnation. 3, New Vegas, obviously Obsidian, but they had help in it. So there's New Vegas, then Fallout 4. God knows what they're going to do with next. Elder Scrolls has 5 installment already, right? They can already give you the picture of where the lore went, right? So with Warhammer, I'm thinking of something like that. Like every Warhammer, their own main story, so many side quests. Like they're doing Starfield right now. Obviously, you can think of whatever the concept of going to different planets and shit. Imagine some game is like that, Warhammer game, where you can go to different planets. Those planets have worlds, and these are all based on the actual Warhammer lore. This is actual Warhammer thing. Imagine how great it would be. God, they would definitely make a ton of money because Warhammer is really famous with everybody, right? Even the celebrities like Henry Cavill posted the video with their miniatures. Yeah, this would be a big thing. I don't know why nobody's doing it. But yeah, obviously there are Warhammer games, but not at the level I'm talking about, like Elder Scrolls type of thing, open world RPG, where there is way too much lore. You discover things, discover side quests, miscellaneous quests, main quests, and DLCs, and God knows what. Yeah, however, there was Imperium's 10 was jobs. Warhammer 40k by the channel Lutin. If you like my reaction, like, subscribe. So I don't know if I should do more of Warhammer 40k from Lutin or do the next one, part 2, which is an hour fucking long. But yeah, I guess I'll see you next time.